We've been extensively covering the nomination by Donald Trump to two critical positions inside the cabinet, both of whom have a long history of being heterodox thinkers and anti-establishment officials, and as a result have created more controversy than almost any other official. We've seen people like Marco Rubio and Elise Stefanik and John Ratcliffe at CIA get approved unanimously with all Democrats voting, but because both Tulsi Gabbard, who Trump wants to make Director of National Intelligence, as well as RFK Jr., who Trump wants to make Secretary of Health and Human Resources, have a history of contesting and challenging and denying a whole bunch of establishment orthodoxies, as well as condemning the corruption of the agencies that they would lead. Those have created more controversy than almost any other, up there with Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth. Certainly Matt Gaetz was the most controversial, and he never made it to a confirmation hearing. Today, however, both of them had major successes, cleared major hurdles, and have substantially increased the likelihood that they will actually be confirmed by the full Senate. I don't want to say that it's 100%. It still does need to go to the Senate floor, but here is the Senate Finance Committee voting today on the confirmation of RFK Jr. to become Health and Human Services Secretary.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Thune.
Aye.
Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Cassidy.
Aye.
Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Langford.
Aye.
Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Daines.
Aye.
Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Barrasso.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mr. Tillis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Marshall.
Aye.
Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden.
No.
Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell.
No.
Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren.
No.
Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders.
No.
Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith.
No.
Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan.
No.
Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock.
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch.
No.
Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the final tally is 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was, would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably.
Now, there you saw every Republican on the committee voting yes, every Democrat on the committee voting no. And what makes this quite odd, among other things, is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been a Democrat his entire life. He was born into the Kennedy family. But it's not just by virtue of his birth. He has been a Democrat his entire life. He became an environmental lawyer. He spent his career suing major corporations and objected to and tried to put a stop to the dumping of their waste in things like rivers and other environmental assets that the United States has. He focused on the environment and then on the public health. And so here you have a lifelong Democrat who ran as a Democrat for president last year and only became an independent because the system was completely rigged. The Democrats wouldn't allow any debates. The DNC wouldn't allow any real open primary. So you have somebody who's been a Democrat until about 7 seconds ago, and every single Democrat votes no, even though RFK Jr. is really the first major health official that I can remember, and certainly in my lifetime, to talk about what an HHS secretary should be focused on above all else, which is the obvious public health crisis that the United States has with huge numbers of people suffering things like obesity and autism at record rates, as well as all kinds of mental health problems. Our food supply is unhealthy, to put that mildly, and the major corporations have seized control of the regulatory agency, all issues that Democrats have said for years they care about. And finally, they have a nominee who is there to work on those issues. I have no love lost for RFK Jr. I've had him on my show. He is a fanatical supporter of Israel, like every Trump nominee is. But for this position, for somebody who needs to come in and confront the health policy, the public health industry that has proven itself to be so unreliable and deceitful over the last 5 years, to try and break down the control of huge corporations, big ag and big insurance companies, in control over our regulatory process, that's exactly someone that you would want. But because these Democrats on this committee are just so driven by partisan loyalties, they just go right down the line voting no against a lifelong Democrat nominated by President Trump. Now, the Republicans are also voting in lockstep, and it is pretty notable given the fact that there are definitely people who are on this committee who have serious reservations about RFK Jr., and we've seen a few no votes so far. Pete Hegseth, for example, suffered 3 no votes. It was, I believe, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell. The Republicans can afford to lose 3. That will make it a tie vote, which then J.D. Vance will break by voting in favor of confirmation. So RFK Jr., again, it's not guaranteed that he's going to get a positive floor vote, though it's highly likely given that they just got every Republican to snap into line. Here is Bill Cassidy. He's a Republican from Louisiana. He has a Senate primary in 2 years, and someone to his right is running and challenging him. He is a physician. He said he's been offended by a lot of things RFK Jr. has done, and especially in terms of challenging the efficacy and safety of vaccines. And here he is explaining, although he was extremely negative during the hearing, how it is that from the end of that hearing until this moment, his obvious opposition to RFK Jr. got converted into a yes vote.
Mr. Kennedy, the administration committed to a strong role of Congress. Aside from he and I meeting regularly, he will come before the Help Committee on a quarterly basis if requested. He committed that the Help Committee chair, whether it's me or someone else, may choose a representative on any board or commission formed to review vaccine safety. If he is confirmed, HHS will provide a 30-day notice to the Help Committee if the agency seeks to make changes to any of our federal vaccine safety monitoring programs, and Help Committee will have the option to call a hearing to further review. These commitments and my expectation that we can have a great working relationship to make America healthy again is the basis of my support. He will be the secretary, but I believe he will also be a partner in working for this.
Probably has something to do with the fact that in 2 years, less than 2 years, he has a serious primary in Louisiana where if he had voted no on RFK's nomination, his Senate career would have almost certainly been over. Donald Trump would have done everything possible to defeat him. He forgot to mention that. But, you know, in some way, this is kind of a cowardly act, but it's also a Democratic one. No question, people in the Republican Party want RFK Jr. confirmed. He proved to be quite popular among not just Trump's voting base, but the independents whose vote he originally sought. And Senator Cassidy is responding to public opinion and his fear of it. And I suppose on some level that's quite healthy. Here's Elizabeth Warren. I apologize for subjecting her to you. And by the way, I was thinking about this the other day. You have these moments where it kind of just like breaks the camel's back when you just cannot tolerate media narratives any longer. I remember in Russiagate, I had that when Donald Trump stood up in front of a press conference during the 2016 campaign and they were asking about Russia and Russian hacking. And he said, I don't know anything about Russian hacking, but Russia, if you're listening, maybe you can find Hillary Clinton's deleted emails. It was actually quite amusing, very ironic, very quick-witted. And the media decided to treat that as though that had been a smoking gun. That was proof that he really was working with the Russians because he's submitting hacking requests directly to the Kremlin. Hey, Kremlin, go find Hillary Clinton's emails. And I remember watching them do that, and I was thinking, it's so obvious that's not what he was doing. Why would he submit his secret hacking request to the Kremlin while standing at a press conference in front of 100 cameras? But for a year or 2 years, that was cited as proof that he was obviously working with the Russians. The fact that he submits his hacking request to the Kremlin just happens to do it in front of the public. When Donald Trump began mocking Elizabeth Warren by calling her Pocahontas, and the media decided to say that that was racist against Native Americans, as though Donald Trump was mocking Native Americans, when in fact he was mocking Elizabeth Warren for falsely having pretended to be a Native American. He was calling her Pocahontas, not to mock Native Americans, but to mock Elizabeth Warren for having faked being one so that she could advance her career. That was another one of those moments where you're just sitting there listening to the media, and they're all claiming Trump is racist for calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. And you just realize that everything you're listening to is complete garbage. In any event, here is Elizabeth Warren explaining why she voted no on RFK's nomination.
stated. This is not only about a private company that gets sued and has to pay out. Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins. If they get sued repeatedly and successfully, they simply move out of the vaccine space. We've already seen this happen with vaccines in the past. 20 years ago, we watched vaccines just move away if they did not have protection from these kinds of lawsuits. The consequence of Mr. Kennedy's ability to make those lawsuits easier is also the ability to shut down access and manufacturing for vaccines for every one of us. And I think that's
I find it truly bizarre to watch Elizabeth Warren angrily rise to the defense of large pharmaceutical corporations and say that the ability to sue them is some sort of threat to their ability to develop and market their product. That had been a longstanding Republican critique forever, that we need tort reform, that we can't have plaintiffs' lawyers suing large corporations because the cost of litigation is so high that they can't be profitable, they're going to be driven out of the space. And here you have Elizabeth Warren, who marketed herself from the beginning as a champion of the working person against large corporations and their power, saying she's voting against RFK Jr. because he sued large pharmaceutical companies in the past and is concerned that he will continue to do so in the future. Even though suing large pharmaceutical companies is one of the ways that you hold them accountable to make sure that the products that they're putting onto the market are in fact safe and that they've disclosed everything to the regulatory agencies whose approval they require. It's like backward world. It's bizarre. But then again, yesterday we watched the Democratic Party march outside of the headquarters of the U.S. AID and act as though it was some kind of humanitarian agency rather than what it is, an arm of the CIA, and that was what Democrats finally found their passion in order to care about. I don't know why I'm on so many tangents tonight. I think I'm just a little bit irritated, and it's helping me expel that irritation, so just follow along with me a little bit. Here is Mark Warner, the senator on the committee that is voting on RFK Jr., but also the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee who's voting on the confirmation of Tulsi Gabbard, which we'll get to in just a second. Here he is talking about why he voted no on RFK Jr. Quote, RFK Jr. sows doubts about settled science, won't stand up to protect access to safe abortions, and spreads conspiracies on everything from vaccines to 9/11, which is why I voted against his nomination. Now, that is the other irony here, is that RFK Jr. has been pro-choice his entire life. I mean, obviously he's a Democrat, and that's sort of the price of admission. So imagine the likelihood that Donald Trump will appoint as his Health and Human Services Secretary a lifelong Democrat who is pro-choice, and that's exactly what he did. And then every Democrat just right down the line like puppets voted no, even though, and they even cited abortion to do it, even though this is a pro-choice Health and Human Secretary. So Health and Human Service Secretary. So this was one of the Trump nominations that from the beginning seemed imperiled, and it has just overcome a major hurdle. And I think an RFK confirmation as Health and Human Service Secretary will be a massive advancement, a huge event for putting somebody in a key government position whose views are so heterodox in comparison to the DC consensus that has prevailed for so long. And as I've said before, it is truly stunning to watch these people defend settled science, as they call it, even though not 20 years ago, not 40 years ago, not even 10 years ago, just 2 years ago, all of these people were defending what they called settled science, and so much of it turned out to be completely false, deceitfully false, aggressively false, maliciously false. And now they're acting like it's offensive to have somebody like RFK Jr. come in and question the orthodoxies of these public health officials who have proven so wrong over and over. So that's RFK Jr. He seems like he's on his way to the confirmation. I don't want to be too assertive in predicting it, but it certainly seems likely. Almost 2 billion people across the world enjoy a cup of coffee as a part of everyday life. We all want the boost from our brew, not the bust, but how many of these people get to drink great coffee? You don't have to suffer the side effects of low-quality coffee, anxiety, insomnia, jitters, acidic stomach aches, headaches, even heart palpitations. Real quality coffee doesn't have these side effects. That's why I drink 1775 coffee. It's what coffee should taste like. and how it should make you feel. 1775 coffee is single farm, high altitude, hand-picked and roasted weekly. No old beans, no mixed origins, no mold fillers or dangerous chemicals. It's coffee that helps you sleep better, feel better, and give you the energy and focus coffee was meant to deliver. Try it for yourself. If you don't love your first cup, it's on us. Send it back for a full refund, no questions asked. Go to 1775coffee.com and use promo code Glenn for 15% off. Plus, every purchase enters you for a chance to win a Tesla and $30,000 in cash. Go to 1775coffee.com today. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.